The key to a learning pillar is not just learning for learning's sake. The key to a learning pillar is choosing what to learn. Let me say that again, choosing what to learn.
Welcome to the Modern Selling Podcast, where we help the entire sales community to create more sales conversations with today's modern buyer. This includes anyone from entrepreneurs and business owners to sales reps and sales leaders. Each episode, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you find, engage, connect, and nurture your relationships with your buyers. I'm Mario Martinez Jr., your host, and you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Gong, the #1 revenue intelligence platform for sales teams. Gong helps you achieve revenue goals by capturing and understanding every customer interaction, then delivering insights at scale so you can win more deals and increase rep productivity. Get powerful visibility into your customer conversations with Gong. Head to www.gong.io to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast, and we are here in the new 2021 year. I've got with me Mr. Brian Margolis, the founder of the productivitygiant.com. And I wanted to have him on the show because it's beginning of the year, thinking about, man, how do I become more productive inside of my sales territory, my plan, my strategy. And I thought, what better way to be able to have the productivity expert himself talking about sales. Brian, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for making this happen.
I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here with you today. So do me a favor and tell our listeners, we've got sales leaders, sales reps, business owners, enablement professionals all around the globe listening in right now. Just do a little bit of a background about yourself. And then I've got a very special question I want to ask you.
Okay. Little background. So I'm actually a former research scientist by training. I'm probably the kid you cheated off of in class, right? I was a science guy my whole life. And about 20 plus years ago now, I decided to become an entrepreneur. I realized I'm just not good at having a job. And even in the field I loved so much. And so I've been an entrepreneur. I can't even believe I'm saying this at this point, but I've been an entrepreneur now for over 2 decades. And you name the kind of business, I've started it. I've gone down the shiny object road, multiple streams of no income, all that kind of stuff, right? Serial entrepreneur by day. And so I stumbled on some things a few years ago, saw an opportunity with what we're going to talk about today. And I'm really enjoying helping salespeople produce a lot more.
And that's primarily the group that you work with is sales reps, yeah?
I work with sales reps. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs as well.
Business owners, entrepreneurs.
Small, but here's the thing, and you already know this. All entrepreneurs have to sell, especially at the beginning, and all salespeople need to run a business. And so it's kind of funny, but depending on how you come into my ecosystem here, a lot of times you're a entrepreneur, small business owner, and we got to work on the sales, or you're a salesperson and we got to teach you how to run the business, right?
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Love working with sales reps. They are business owners to me.
Without a doubt. And if you've got a quota of $1 million, as an example, that's a pretty darn big, healthy, small business of $1 million worth of revenue.
Right.
It's a great business. It's a great business to have, especially if you're a soloist. With that in mind, do me a favor. As always, and as customary, I ask all my guests, tell us something nobody knows about you, even if they were to look at your social profiles.
Wow. So here's one. So I said I was a research scientist in a past life.
Yeah.
And what I actually specialized in fisheries and fish. And most people think of, when they think of fish, they think of the sharks and they don't think about the bait fish, right? They don't think about, everyone just calls them bait fish and minnows. And what I used to do for the government and in the program I ran is one of my specialties was basically being able to identify the different species of bait fish. And I literally would grab, a handful of fish that you would just look at and go, oh, shiner, put it on a hook, right? And I would count the anal fin rays, mind you. Pull out the anal fin there on the bottom of the fish. And based on the number I counted, that would tell me which species it was for certain bait fish. And it actually mattered whether it was one or the other. So I guarantee you I've never said that in public or on a podcast.
Well, that's actually pretty impressive. That's actually something I did not know at all. So you called it the what is it called again? The what fin?
The anal fin ray.
The anal fin ray. It's just a bad name.
I know. That's why I went there. You said we were drinking at a bar, didn't you?
Yeah. It's like, the pre-show, for everybody who knows, it's like we're either having a drink at the bar or we're having a drink at Starbucks. One of the two, you choose. All right. Well, that makes sense. So that's actually quite interesting, but also it ties well into your background, on the fishery side of the house. That is, interesting story. My experience with a fishery, true story. My wife, now I guess it's been 8 years, almost died. And as a direct result of almost dying, she represented 0.01% of the world's population that came in contact with salmonella, a brand new strand that they had not seen before. That was a national outbreak here in the domestic U.S.
Oh, geez.
And there were about 650 cases across the U.S. And it was as a result of raw tuna that had been dispersed and distributed through a fishery here in Santa Clara, California. And that fishery was it was a tuna scrape, essentially what it was. It's the tuna scrape they use in sushi rolls. So interestingly enough, she and I shared a sushi roll. She got sick, I didn't, but how she represented the 0.01% of the world's population is, like, I think the number is, I'm working off memory here, this was 8 years ago, but 98% of the world's population manifests salmonella poisoning in the first 72 hours, vomiting, diarrhea, those types of things. And then 1.99% of the rest of the world population manifested within the first 2 weeks. And 0.01% of the world's population manifests salmonella poisoning within 3 weeks of coming in contact. Well, my wife was on the 21st day.
Oh,
the 21st day, turns out nobody knew, and nobody knew to ask that, hey, did you come in contact with any type of raw, spicy, tuna or anything like that? Because she was asymptomatic from a normal body response. And what ended up happening is she carries the gene for arthritis, which she didn't have up until 8 years ago. And she woke up with what they called a sausage digit. She literally woke up, and my wife's only about 115 pounds, right? So she's very petite, very small, very thin. And she woke up, and she showed me her index finger. She woke me up. She showed me her index finger. I swear to you, it was a hot link on her hand, right? Think of a small woman with a small hand, right? like very thin.
Yeah.
And it looked like a hot link. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? Turns out her immune response to the salmonella poisoning was a trigger or reaction to the arthritis gene that she carried. So they ended up putting her on a couple sets of drugs to help solve a certain problem, even went through a finger surgery because they said she had a blood infection. And then they subsequently put her on some medication. Turns out one of the medications that she was on, she was allergic to, and they didn't know that. And they kept upping the dose because the other medication that she was on, which was steroids, was blocking the immune response, which is a normal reaction to an allergic reaction.
I do not eat raw fish.
Well, she doesn't eat it anymore.
I know a little too much from the industry. So
that stemmed from the fishery, and true story. After it all got peeled back, lawsuits and everything happened. True story. The men in the fishery put someone up to a bet that they wouldn't get into the tuna scrape bowl or bucket naked. And as a direct result, my listeners are going to be so grossed out on this. It was the result of fecal matter from the dude's butt that contaminated the spicy tuna. And so nonetheless, that fishery is now out of business. We put him out of business.
Good. That's not how everyone saw this podcast started.
Everybody's like, what did we just talk about? How did we go there? Anyways, that was my experience with fisheries, and it just reminded me of that. And I was like, wait, man, we just took me down memory lane. And I don't know who's going to top that story, but All right, very good. Well, I'm happy to have you on. And, beginning of the year is really an important time for a lot of sales folks, especially as they're looking at planning their future and planning the rest of the year out as a business owner. Now, one of the things that you're a big believer on is that most sales professionals operate without a strategy, which obviously no strategy equals a reduction in sales productivity. It is not the sales productivity formula. So do me a favor, elaborate. So, is that true? Do you think that's that's the case, that they operate without a strategy?
100%. And here's, I want to be clear, because there's a lot of definitions about of the word strategy, right? And it depends on the level of the company you're at. So most people that I work with, most professionals that I deal with, even if I'm not working with them, you can kind of grind, especially think about a salesperson, you can grind your way to a certain level of success just with your skills and talent and your work ethic, right? You can kind of grind your way. But at a certain point, you can't just double your business by doubling your hours, by doubling how many emails you send, by doubling how hard you work. You hit that upper limit. What that third component is, which most sales professionals never stick with consistently, is having an actual strategy. Now, let me explain what I mean by strategy. A predetermined place to focus those skills and work ethic so they get the biggest return on investment, right? Instead of just go, winging it, being reactive all day. The best analogy I can use that most salespeople can grasp is, I think we can all agree that flies are good at flying, right? I mean, we literally named them the fly, okay? Yet one fly that has, all the work ethic in the world, all the flying skills in the world, points those skills and effort in one direction and winds up dead on the windowsill, right? Keeps running into the windowsill. You take the same skill and work ethic, point it in a different direction, and you zip right out the door. And so that's what I mean by strategy, having a predetermined place to focus your skills, to focus your work ethic. And so when it comes to sales professionals, look, I think there's two versions of everybody's business, right? Think about Mary Q salesperson, okay? Mary Q salesperson has two versions of her business, and they have the same ingredients. They have the same skills, the same talent, the same work ethic, the same access to resources. One is the reactive version of her business, right? Where she just go, react all day, flying by the seat of her pants, right? That's kind of the reactive version of her business. And the problem with the reactive version of a business is most of the output doesn't give you anything back. The other version of her business is the intentional version. And the intentional version of her business, she determines ahead of time based on, good criteria, good thinking. She determines where to put her skills, effort, talent, work ethic so that she gets the biggest return. And the difference between those two versions of the exact same business, they're huge. They're huge. It's the difference between winding up dead on the windowsill and flying out to freedom, success. So when I say they operate without a strategy, look, maybe they're happy with where they're at and flying by the seat of their pants and hustle and grind, but there's a better way to do it, and there's more leverage in the intentional version.
Without a doubt, agree with you. Operating without a plan to make your plan, and in the case of a salesperson, is, to your point, going to end up on the windowsill splattered, right? But I think, though, the challenge that we have is salespeople don't know how to develop a strategy, how to plan, how to focus in on the right areas. And it feels like there's so many levers that I have to pull in order to be able to do what I need to do to be able to be successful. So with that in mind, how do you focus on this and subsequently build a strategy plan to be, quote, as you said, intentional?
Right. So there's three components of an intentional plan. Okay, there's three components. One of them is, and in the system, we refer to these as pillars, but one is consistency, right? What are those things that you need to do consistently. Okay. So the way you can think about it is, what do you already know how to do effectively that if you just did more of or were more consistent with would have the biggest impact on your business? For example, even if you're just average at asking for referrals, even if you're just average at it, by being consistent with asking for referrals, the return on investment is huge, because how long does it take to ask for a referral, right? So
Not
that's
very
something.
long.
Yeah, right. So even if you go 1 out of 20, right? The return on investment is huge. Then you have the effectiveness component. Okay. That's kind of the second part of an intentional business, which is, I see a lot of sales professionals out there and they're multiplying by 0, meaning they have no problem making the dials, sending the emails. But what they don't do is they don't actually get better, right? They don't become more effective at the skill. And so I think because of the grind and hustle mentality that's kind of really risen to the surface, I think a lot of salespeople would consider making 25 cold calls productive. But yet, if I said, would you be willing to spend an hour a week getting better at something, right? Learning, like working on your messaging, working on your direct response copywriting, most of them don't see that as work. And so you have to intentionally put time and effort into getting better at those skills so that when you do send the email, you get a higher response rate. And then the third part of the strategic pillars, or the strategic component, and that is making sure you're doing the things up front that make everything else more effective. And again, classic sales example is, sure, you can just make 50 dials, but if you actually took an hour each week to do research on the clients, 90 minutes, and picked your 50 people, those same dials become more effective, right?
So you refer to it as pillars. To expand on that, is that, I think they call it the pillar system, right?
Yeah, the pillar system. Yeah. So all a pillar is, it's an activity. It's an activity that you control whether it gets done or not. That's the key. It's not a goal. It's something you control. It's like an action or a predictable result. And so we put together this list of critical activities, these pillars, whose completion are in your control. And the idea is, as long as you hit your pillars every week, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever you have, everything else takes care of itself, right? On Friday night, regardless of that week's results, your business is moving in the right direction.
Right. And the third, I heard you say this: consistency, effectiveness, and the third thing was do things up front, or did you have a different name for that?
Yeah, I refer to it as, so you have your consistency pillars or your action pillars, right? So your consistency pillars, your effectiveness pillars, and your strategic pillars.
Strategic pillars. All right. So I want to map a name to this. I'm going to call this, you call it the pillars, but I call this a sales productivity formula.
That's fine.
Right. Yeah. And with that in mind, consistency, do the things that you know that you can do easily that have produced results. Getting a referral as an example. Effectiveness and your strategy pillar, doing things up front. Something I truly bang the drum on all the time is the day before. If whatever you're going to do today, you should have planned it the night before.
Right.
You don't come in and plan who you're going to call, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it the day of. You're doing that the night before so that you have a strategy going into what you're going to do on a day over day basis.
Yeah.
And that is a huge problem that I think most sellers walk in, they're like, okay, what am I going to do today? I got 200 emails. I'm going to go through my emails. And then I got to follow up with Susie and John. Maybe I'll produce a video for Billy, who hasn't contacted me. Yeah, okay, I'm going to be productive and do that.
Yeah.
Problem is had you thought about the night before, or in your case, which you mentioned,
or the week, right? The week before.
Yeah, the week before, right? Like you planned your week out now. If you would have thought about that, you would have had the whole entire methodical week to put together a strategy and plan and play your plays one by one by one and know where you're going. And maybe if you need to call an audible in between, you can certainly call an audible. right? And
So-
for those of you who don't know the term audible, it's a football term, but which has changed the play right out the line of scrimmage.
Kill.
Yeah, exactly. So
Let me give your audience. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah,
So
go ahead.
Let me give your audience a different way, because remember I said earlier about I think salespeople need to operate more like a business, right? Run the business of themselves, right? Because they are a business. If you think about a company, right? Like even your company, who gets paid the most in the average company that someone thinks of? The CEO of a public company tends to get paid the most. And a lot of people look at that and go, well, that's not fair. We're the ones doing the work. They're blah, blah, blah. But think about what the CEO does. The reason the CEO is paid the most and is the most important person in the company is because the CEO is the one who determines where to put the company's resources. Where do they put their manpower? Where do they put their money? Where do they put their time? Because that's ultimately what determines the success of the company. And that's why they get paid the most, because if they're good at doing that, then the people who actually execute on the strategy, it becomes successful. Now think about what happens to a salesperson. What you just said was great, because if you're going to go in the heat of the moment, when you're in the trenches, when you're operating, that is not the time to determine what to do, because you will make bad decisions. You will do what you feel like doing. You will do what's screaming at you the loudest, right? So the word I use is trust your CEO. If you are a salesperson and you put together, in my case, it would be your pillars, right? Your weekly pillars, but it doesn't matter, whatever strategy you use. If when you're thinking clearly with your manager, whoever, and you put together this plan, once you're in the heat of battle, you've got to trust your CEO. Because if all you do is what you feel like doing or react to everything that's going on around you, it's a disaster. It's a disaster. And that's really what I mean by they don't have a strategy.
Now, one of the other pillars that you talk about as well is what's called the learning pillar.
Yeah.
What is that?
So the learning pillar, that goes under the effectiveness concept, right? The learning pillar. First of all, you have people who just never get better, period, right? They think they're born with, this is who I am and I'm just going to grind it out. Okay, I can't help you. But there's a lot of salespeople who want to get better. And they think you get better by just reading a lot of books and listening to a lot of podcasts and, but they more think about doing it when they have time, right? They don't think of it as a priority. The key to a learning pillar is not just learning for learning's sake. The key to a learning pillar is choosing what to learn. Let me say that again, choosing what to learn. Because Mario, you have certain skills right now, okay? And I have certain skills, and we can always get better in all of them. But there are certain skills that if I go from a 4 to a 7 or a 6 to a 9 will pay me a lot more than maybe if you went from a 6 to a 9 in that same skill.
Sure.
So for example, if you're a sales rep and the bottleneck in your business is access, okay, if that's the bottleneck in your business, you don't have enough relationships, enough appointments, enough meetings, well, your learning pillars should be built around that bottleneck, right? If it's great to learn how to close and overcome objections and get better at all that. But if you're only having 4 meetings a week, 3 meetings a week, maybe right now that's not where we put the most time, right? Because that's not going to give you the return on investment. And so I think it's critical that a salesperson determines what to actually get better at, because some things will give them a better ROI than others.
Thus, they need to then go out and get training or learn how to get better in that particular area. Is that what you're saying?
100%. And guess what? There's no shortage of podcasts like yours and companies like that look, you give away all this content for free.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Somebody could listen to your podcast and maybe 2 others, and they could learn everything they ever needed to learn about sales.
Yeah,
right?
No doubt.
Information's not the issue. It's getting better at it.
And also, I think a lot of sellers have what you and I call and know as squirrel syndrome, right? shiny object syndrome.
Right.
Look, squirrel on the fence. Ooh, it's shiny. We get distracted, and there's so
Of
much
course.
information, right? So much. What do we do with all that, and what do we process? And interestingly enough, a lot of folks read sales books, and I'm not saying no to sales books, nor am I poo-pooing on sales books. There's probably some really great authors, and I've had some really amazing authors that have been on my show, and I've even read some of those books as well. But I hate reading books, Brian. I hate reading books. I'm not a book reader. I follow that's if I want to be able to go to sleep and early, I start reading a book. That's what I do.
Yeah. Well,
Rather, what I do is I consume thousands of blogs and thousands of videos per year. I like reading in short form, short snippets, being able to consume and digest, and quickly be able to get the answers because I want answers right now.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for.
and you know what? You know what you're doing, which is what we're talking about. You're being intentional about how you learn.
Absolutely.
Meaning you're looking for the best thing. What do I need to get better at now? What do I need to figure out now? I'm amazed to me, I have a lot of clients, a lot of sales reps that companies give me their sales reps sometimes to help them with their strategies. And they've been through God knows how many sales trainings in their career, right?
Yeah.
God knows how many sales trainings. And they keep coming back to, but this is the thing I struggle with, and they don't help me with this. And I go, have you ever heard of Google? But it sounds funny, but I can't, they'll tell me, I'm having a hard time getting, the corner office meeting or the big meeting. And our connection here, we were introduced by Stu Heineck. I mean, you have guys like that who literally you Google and there's 10,000 different creative ideas to get meetings.
Yeah.
Right. You got Dale Dupree, you got all the different people. There's no shortage of that stuff.
Yeah.
But you have to be intentional about it. You got to determine what to get better at. And then you obviously have to get out there and do it so you can get feedback, right? And then you continue to get better.
Exactly. The problem or challenge comes with if you don't know what you need to get better at. And that is a sales leadership, sales coaching, sales management problem.
It is. Sometimes.
I think based upon what you're saying, well, yeah, sometimes that's true. Very good point. But oftentimes, if you don't know what you need to get better at because you're not performing well, then it's really the sales leaders who are not coaching you, or you're not taking the coaching. So my question to you is the things that you just described, right? The consistency pillar, the effectiveness pillar, the strategy pillar, all of these pillars and the subpoints, one of them being the learning pillar. These are all things that sales managers can apply to as well, right?
100%. So when I'm dealing with sales managers, okay, here's what I tell them. I say, look, right now you can monitor activity. Most of them can monitor activity, right? How many calls are you making? How many meetings are you having? And then you can monitor results, right? You see the sales coming in or not coming in. But then I call that space in between the dark chasm of anecdotes, right? Because you're trying to figure out with your sales rep, why aren't I selling with all this activity or vice versa? And they start telling you stories because that's what we do as humans, right? We start getting revisionist history and we go, well, I've been having some good meetings. I'm trying to focus more on this. And so what I explain to sales managers is, look, one of the benefits without, being too self-promotional here, but, without the benefit of the pillars, meaning knowing what activities they're doing each week to hit those, to get those results or not get those results, what it allows the sales managers to do is go, okay, this is where you need the training because this is what you claim you're doing and you claim you're doing it this much a week. Apparently you're not effective at it, right? If you're sending out 500 emails a week and you're not getting many responses, guess what you need help with, right?
Creating email copy.
Direct response. Do you know how many Fortune 500 companies I've worked with where when I introduced the concept of direct response copywriting, they look at me like with their eyes crossed.
Yeah.
Right? Because their idea of copywriting is what the marketing department does, making brochures and all that. And I say, no, I'm talking about, look, let me take a step back. There's only two, you already know this. There's only two reasons you won't get a meeting. It'll never change. It's never changed. either number one, you have nothing that person values.
Right.
They're not willing to trade 30 minutes of their time for what you're offering. Or number two, which is probably more common if you're selling for a company, is you can't articulate that value quickly, and underline the word quickly about 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
You might have something of value, but if you can't articulate it in a subject line and the first sentence of that email or a single sentence, you're done, right? And so direct response copywriting or whatever skill they have to learn.
And actually, we had Stu Heineke on the podcast, which we'll link into the show notes as well. And that was actually...
Oh, I'm sick of giving Stu business. No more links.
But actually, believe it or not, it actually happens to be our most popular podcast, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. And
you know why it's your most popular podcast?
Because everybody wants to get meetings, and it works.
It's the title.
Yeah.
How to Get a Meeting with Anyone is a genius title.
Yeah.
Even if the content of the podcast wasn't good, and I'm sure it was with Stu, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. And here's how I know, because I've done some work with Stu, and I have some of my clients write an email with the subject line, How to Get a Meeting with Anyone. And it gets opened like crazy because they're all actually calling on salespeople, these clients.
Right.
Which is kind of funny. Salespeople calling on salespeople.
That's what we do. We sell to sales leaders. You gotta love it. And the best one I love is, how did you get my number? What? Are you seriously asking our rep, how did you get my number?
You're a salesperson.
You're a salesperson, for God. Please, people, if we're selling to you and one of my sellers call you, do not ask them, how did you get my number?
Right. Or you say, how'd you get my number? That was a genius. I want to learn.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's funny when sales leaders get irritated.
No empathy.
No, and it's funny when sales leaders get irritated when a salesperson calls them to sell to the sales line of business. And it's like, geez, I don't have time. This is a bad time. Like, take me off your list. Really? Like, I'm like, come on.
I'm the opposite. I'm a complete mark. I feel bad for them. I'm like, I almost want to start correcting them, but I don't. And I'm like, yeah,
hey, so man, I do. I'll listen to the pitch. I'll be like, all right, listen, here's the story. I'm not your buyer. I'm not a right fit. But let me tell you, your pitch sucks. And here's why.
I never had formal sales training. I was the entrepreneur who I denied that I was in sales for probably the first 10 years of my career. Because, I was an entrepreneur. Sales was sleazy. What are you talking about? And until I took ownership of it. So I can relate.
Let's I want to talk a little bit about, you talked about something in our pregame show about being good at something is different than being successful.
Yeah.
And I want to touch on that. But before we touch on that particular topic, I want everyone to listen to this message from our program sponsor. Opinions in sales are your worst enemy. Here's why. Your business has million-dollar questions that if you could answer with facts, you'd have an unfair advantage. Those questions are, what really separates your best reps from the rest? Why do end-of-quarter deals slip? What messaging is resonating with your ever-changing market? It turns out the truth is buried right underneath your nose. It's found in the customer conversations your team is having every day. Introducing Gong. Gain powerful visibility into your customer conversations. With Gong, you'll win more deals, skyrocket rep success, and gain critical market intelligence that will help you achieve revenue success and win the lion's shares of the wealth. Go to gong.io/demo to get started today. Okay, right before that program break, I asked you a question about being good at something is different than being successful. Right. What do you mean when you say that?
So being good at your craft, okay, and in this case, being a salesperson, right? You may have charisma. You may have empathy. You may have the ability to tell good stories, right? You may have the ability to overcome objections. You may be good at the craft, the trade craft, right? The trade skills of sales. However, you might not run a great business. So you might be really good, but because you're all over the place, flying by the seat of your pants, you're not intentional. A lot of times you can be really good at something, but not be that successful at it, right? It's like the mechanic who fixes your car might be able to smell what's wrong with your car from the parking lot and tell you what's wrong with it. But that doesn't mean they run a good mechanic shop, right? It doesn't mean they generate financial advisors. There's financial advisors out there who you wouldn't let manage your dog's money, but yet they have huge books of business because they're great at the running the business part, the selling, the marketing, and things like that. And so when I talked earlier about the reactive version of your business and the intentional version, that's what I meant. If you're operating in the reactive version, your talent can only take you so far. Your natural talents, your skills, it's got to be directed in the right place. And that's what I mean about, being good at something is different than being successful.
Yeah, fair. Understood. You also talk about something called the Friday night feeling.
Love it. I have it. I have it right now.
Yeah. So when I saw that and I said, Friday night feeling, well, tell me what that means, because when in my younger days, I had a different definition than in my older days.
So Mario, I've had a lot of successful sales reps work with me. Okay. We've done a lot of good things over the years, and that's all great. The number one compliment or positive thing I get about what we do is the Friday night feeling. And here's what it is. All of us, I'm telling you, everyone listening to this is a business owner. Even if you get a W-2, you run your own business. Okay. If you're a salesperson, you run your own business. And because we work for ourselves, we run our own businesses, even as W-2 sales reps, there's always work that can be done. There's always more to do, right? There's Fred Flintstone doesn't slide down the dinosaur after the parrot. You don't have that parrot telling you it's over. And so what happens is when you execute on your pillars consistently, when you execute on them in that given week, regardless of that week's results, because let's be honest, in sales, you can do all the right things and the sales results that week might not be ideal, what actually landed, right? Because there's a cycle to it. You can do all the wrong things and have a great week of sales, right? From previous weeks. Okay. So what happens on Friday night when you have a predetermined, and again, it doesn't matter if you use the pillar system or any other intentional strategy, but the idea is, as long as you execute on your pillars that week, these lead indicators, not lag indicators, that's what sales are, lag indicators. These lead indicators, on Friday night, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that your business is moving in the right direction and it's just a matter of time and pressure. I personally and my clients, I don't care. We're talking right now at the end of a week. I don't care what happened this week from a sales standpoint outside of I hope things happened. But I know I had a great week because I hit my pillars. I did what I needed to do. The compound effect is working in the background. And I think it's not just important for your business, but I think it's important for your mental health, right? That knowing you had a good week. Because you can be on the emotional roller coaster if it's only about what sales landed.
So the Friday night feeling then is the feeling that you get as a result of having the good week?
Of having hit all your pillars.
Of having hit all your pillars. So
because if you hit your pillars, you did have a good week.
Gotcha. All right. I'm with you. And that requires that you have to write things down, right?
Yeah, sorry. There's always a catch.
Is that where the index card comes into play?
That's where the index card comes in.
Talk about that. What is this index card concept that you got?
So the whole idea is that the pillar system, you can run your business from an index card, meaning you're only going to have 6, 7, maybe 8 pillars if it's really crazy. But the idea is they can fit on an index card. And as long as you do those things, everything else takes care of itself. And so I remember being at a big industry event, and I was on a panel, and I had a couple of my more successful clients with me. And one of them the audience was asking one of my clients a question, because the audience knew that this gentleman was a crusher, had absolutely knocked the cover off of it for many years. and they asked about his business plan, and he goes into his pocket and he pulls out his index card. It's like actually it was his wallet. It was like folded in four, and he unravels it and he goes, "This is my business plan. As long as I do these 6 things every week, everything else takes care of itself." And it's like, that's the whole. Now, again, obviously you don't have to use an index card, but it's amazing how much easier sometimes it is to track things kind of low tech, high check, right? Everything doesn't have to get buried in a Salesforce system.
Yeah. Sometimes the good old Post-it note works just fine. What are you holding up? The index card?
That's my index card. These are my pillars. You'll notice they're all done for the week, except for one. I still have to work out. I have one more workout left, right? These are my pillars right there. So I run my week from an index card.
And give me an idea. Read off to me if it's okay to share.
Of course.
Those pillars. Like, what do you got on there?
All right. So I currently have 5 pillars. I have to spend 3 hours a week. I call it SIS lead generation. That's my group program, right? Working on my lead generation for my SIS program, putting that together. My second pillar is called Excel follow. So I keep all of my opportunities on an Excel sheet, 3 columns: name, date of last contact, and then any notes on the opportunity. Every week, I have to go down that entire list, name by name, and anyone who needs that next touch, that next poke, that next call, gets it. That's my follow-up system. Nothing falls through the cracks. My third pillar is a social media pillar. It has a little acronym on the number of posts, emails, and referrals I have to ask for. That's combined in there. The fourth one is also it's for my email list. I have to write my 2 emails a week. And then my fifth pillar is 3 workouts a week. And so as long as I do those 5 things, I'm good.
I like that you added the exercise inside there, which is one of my biggest problems. And by the way, people who know me will know what this means when I say this. But I get bored working out by myself. I got to work out with someone. I got to talk to somebody. I'm a social creature.
Mario, I hate working out. You know those endorphins that everyone always talks about? Like you get that. I don't know what they're talking about. I've never experienced it in my life.
They don't happen.
Nope. Yet here's what's interesting. And this is a pretty low bar, but I work out more consistently than I'm going to guess 95% of this country.
Oh, I'm sure.
And here's why. Because I do it to hit my pillars.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with working out. I've developed the habit of pillar execution. That is an open loop in my head. And I've got to cross that off every week.
Yeah.
And so I work out more to hit my pillars than I do to work out.
I love it. Well, that allows you to be a disciplined individual, right? Understand how you're planning your week out, what you need to hit in terms of your goals and accomplishments, and to your point, the pillars, and really create a formula that allows you to be more productive, if you would. Now, Brian, you've got is it a book called The Pillar System?
The book is called The Index Card Business Plan for Sales Pros and Entrepreneurs.
Okay. And it's all around the pillar system, correct?
It's all around the pillar system. Yep.
Gotcha. And some of the results, briefly, because we only got just another minute or two, some of the results that you've seen as a result of putting things on an index card as a pillar.
Yeah. So I have multiple 7-figure sales reps, 7-figure earners that are W-2. They work for a company. They work for an employer, which is, I think, more impressive to hit 7 figures than if you work for yourself, because they like to cut back commissions when you make that much, right?
Or double the quota.
Yeah. So we have multiple 7-figure earners running it from an index card. We've had Fortune 500 companies license the system from us, right? Even though it's an index card. And again, I'll say my number one thing that I'm most proud of is how many people get the Friday night feeling. They enjoy their weekends guilt-free. And you know, as you get older in this business, you have a family and other people have families and stuff. It's like, you know, for people to tell you, it's like, wow, you know, my husband loves me now because I don't work on the weekends and da-da-da. That's probably the thing we're the most proud of.
Nice. And for anyone who wants to reach out to Brian Margolis, then what should they do, Brian?
Productivitygiant.com is the easiest way. Keep it simple, productivitygiant.com. get a
All
free
right.
copy of the book, whatever else you need.
And are you on LinkedIn as well? They reach out on LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn. We got a group on Facebook. We're all over the place, but everything starts at productivitygiant.com.
Sounds good. And if you do reach out to Brian, we'll have his LinkedIn profile in the show notes. If you do reach out, make sure you say you heard him on the Modern Selling Podcast show so that he knows where you came from.
Right.
Brian, before I let you go, your all-time favorite movie, what is it?
Glory.
Glory.
It is with Denzel Washington and Matthew Broderick about the Civil War.
Civil War. Yeah. Okay. All right. Glory it is.
I can't even tell you why, except just like, wow.
We'll take it. We'll put that into the show notes for those of you who want to watch Glory. Brian, great to have you on the podcast here, the Modern Selling Podcast. Don't turn that dial yet. I want you to listen to this very important message from our program sponsor. Sales managers, before you go, does it feel like everything is a priority and everyone is asking for your time and attention? Here's a free video training that will help you manage your time, double your income, and will skyrocket your team's success. It's called the Sales Management Matrix. You'll learn exactly how to spend your time for the highest revenue return possible. Go to gong.io/matrix to get the free 19-minute video training. Again, that's gong.io/matrix. Go there now, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a rating and review on iTunes. I would appreciate it. Also, if you want to easily find our show, just go to themodernsellingpodcast.com. Hey, since you'll be on our site, be sure to check out our Modern Marketing Engine podcast hosted by my co-founder and CMO, Bernie Borges. Thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.